Good afternoon and welcome to Antithesis.
Antithesis is a weekly radio soiree of stimulating commentary and entertaining conversation discussing issues of importance in our daily lives.
Antithesis airs Sunday afternoon at 5:30.
I'm Richard Curtis.
I'm Leo Griep-Ruiz.
The opinions expressed on Antithesis are the opinions of the person speaking them,
and do not necessarily represent the views of the board, staff, or management of KGNU or of us here at Antithesis.
Because I might not agree with him.
And I might not agree with him.
Oh boy, here we go again. Millennium madness is descending upon the land, and it's only going to get crazier. Most of us are aware of the end-of-the-century weirdness that hit in the late 1800s. The awful level of death during the Civil War set things up for spiritualists to prey upon the lost and lonely. A lot of these people were, of course, sincere. I'm not going to condemn every single one of those persons who tried to breach the gap between the living and the dead. I don't know, but that some of them actually did have the ability to communicate with those who have passed from this world. I do know that it's something I'm not going to mess with. I also know that there were a lot of shameless charlatans who took advantage of others in order to make a bunch of money or to get perverted satisfaction from messing with the emotionally and psychologically weak. The recent mass suicides by the Gate of Heaven and Solar Temple cults may be unprecedented in fin de siècle outbursts. It's sad that certain individuals would find this life so unsatisfying that they'd willingly consume a lethal dose of booze and downers and nod off, expecting to wake up in a spaceship or in some place better than what they've got. It's especially strange considering that the members of Heaven's Gate and the Solar Temple seem to have been pretty well off. It's not like Jonestown, where most of the membership were desperate for a way out of material and social poverty, or like the ever-increasing rate of suicide among youth who despair in the vacuum of alienation, or like the relief of unbearable pain, or the hastening towards an inevitable death by those who choose to end their lives after they've scraped the bottom of modern medicine's barrel. There are certain suicides which are positively heroic. The classic cases of the soldiers who throw themselves upon a hand grenade to save their fellows, or the ones who volunteer to be in the first wave of an assault on the enemy to draw fire so that the ones behind them will be able to establish secure positions, or the ones who volunteer to be in the rear guard so that the rest of their group can get away to regroup and fight another day, or the ones who kill themselves knowing that they will be captured and tortured and prefer to die by their own hand rather than chance, giving up information which a skilled torturer can extract from virtually anyone. We all know that there are cultures which have ritualized suicide as a way to maintain honor under otherwise impossible circumstances. The Japanese practice of seppuku, vulgarly called harakiri, that is belly cutting, is known to everyone but understood by few outside of Japanese culture. The incident at Waco was a mass suicide murder, though it seems to have been triggered by a tragic convergence of apocalyptic evangelical death wish messianism with BATF FBI kill wish bungling. For all we know, David Koresh may have led his followers to an orderly end like the ones in the ironically named Rancho Santa Fe, the Holy Faith Ranch mansion, or he might have cleaned up and made a few $1 million as a televangelist. We'll never know. But we can be certain that apocalyptic messianism is dangerous stuff, especially on the eve of the dramatic-looking year 2000. What is this 2000 anyway? It's an arbitrary date based on a zero established by Christian calendar makers who many historians now say were 4 years off. I've seen estimates of the year of the birth of the historical Jesus of Nazareth placing his birth at about the year 4 BCE. This is based on Roman records giving the dates of the period during which Pontius Pilate was the proconsul at Jerusalem and counting back 33 years to overlap with the time when Herod was the king of Judea. I'm no expert in the minutiae of Roman history, so I'd greatly appreciate hearing from any listeners out there who have been able to seriously study this topic. I just know that I've run across this 4 BCE date on a number of occasions, and it seemed credible, or I would have ignored it like I ignore the stuff that some people say trying to deny the existence of Nazi death camps and the murder of 6 million Jews. I've been thinking about this year 2000 business a lot recently because it is a business and it's only going to get bigger. You can bet that New Year's Eve 1999 is going to be totally out of control. I thought that 1966 was going to be celebrated as the 2000th year since the birth of Jesus. After all, if Jesus of Nazareth was born in 4 BCE, that would make 1996, 4 years before 2000, the actual beginning of the third millennium of the Christian era. Actually, it would be the last year of the second millennium, but later for that. I thought that Christians would celebrate 1996. I mean, if the pageantry surrounding the Pope's visit was any indication, whee! But it seems to have escaped. This matter of dates and days does not, however, escape me. My maternal ancestors were deeply concerned, some would say obsessed, with the concept of time and with its measurement. The scientists of ancient Mesoamerica developed one of the most accurate calendars the world has ever known, a calendar which is still in use among many of our peoples as a tool which does much more than merely place convenient names and numbers on increments of our planet's passage through space. For us, you see, this 2000 is largely meaningless except to the extent that we will have to put up with a bunch of craziness. I mean no disrespect to sincere Christians. I will stay a respectful distance out of their way as long as they don't try to shove their beliefs down my throat like their missionaries did to us in the past with violence and or guilt trips, or as they continue to do in the present with food, medical attention, and or guilt trips. In return, I will not try to force my beliefs upon them. It's a do unto others as you would have them do unto you kind of a deal. And as for all those millenarians waiting and hoping and praying for the Space Brothers to come and take them away, well, I'm reminded of Fidel Castro when the U.S. government offered to accept any Cuban who wanted to leave the island. Yes, please, any of you who want to leave this precious planet, pack up your bags and split now. And I'd include everyone who is incapable of treating this lovely little ball of dirt and water we call Earth with the respect it deserves. Like it says on a bumper sticker I saw someplace, Earth, love it or leave it.
Love it or leave it.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
Well, thank you.
It is a scary thing. It's very disturbing. You know, we got a couple years left, and it's hard to tell how bad things are going to get.
Oh, they got to get worse. I mean, they're not going to get better until they get worse, because people obviously ain't uptight enough to do anything about how bad it is right now. At least people around here aren't, like.
And there are going to be a lot of people grasping at really weird straws.
But 2001 is the actual real change of the century.
What's the century anyway? I mean, what is that stuff? It's just stuff. It's like calling, so...
At least that's the only part that we do adhere to that's metric.
Yeah, just because... or decimal. Decimal.
Mm-hmm.
We should welcome
Based on 10.
Eulalia Theodore to Antithesis this week.
Yes, we have.
Thank you very much. Eulalia is a school teacher from Denver.
Right, teaches middle school.
So we're trying to keep in touch with at least people who keep in touch with the youth.
She has
the inner city of Denver.
She has this look in her eye as she looks at us where I think that we're not really that dissimilar from the middle school.
Just running amok at the mouth.
Look at that.
Mentality?
Yeah.
As all three of us?
Is that why you get along with your students, because you're just one of them?
I remember those days. In fact, I even suffer from sympathetic acne.
Oh man, that is a scary
At my
thought.
49 years.
For any of you who are thinking about going into education, be warned.
Well, I mean, we could get into other issues then too. I mean, like, I know I don't want to relive pubescence and early adolescence.
Same here.
Or acne.
But we can't understand.
Actually, I've had more of it since I've gotten to be, I'm 50 now, and I've got, I started getting more zits when I turned about 35, 40 than I ever did when I was a teenager.
Well, you've cleared up nicely.
Thank you. But no, it's like a regular deal. I mean, I find, it wasn't until I was about 40 that I had to shave every day. In terms of meeting certain standards. Someone's standards somewhere. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I've got, mustache and chin whiskers, but if I don't shave for a week, then it looks like, a white guy's, like...
5 o'clock shadow?
Well, no, for me, 5 o'clock shadow is about 3 days of not shaving. And then after after about a week, it looks like, oh, you're trying to grow a beard. And after about 2 weeks is, oh, you're growing a beard. And after about 4 weeks, it's, oh, you tried to grow a beard.
It just fell off.
Yeah, so, you know.
So now our thoughts, since you mentioned the Toltecs indirectly,
Well,
the Maya,
the Mesoamerican calendar.
because I think the Toltecs were the first to devise the calendar that the Maya adopted.
There's
And then
actually a lot of different phases,
But I
and
think the
the term Tolteca or Toltec in Nahuatl means craftsperson, and that's actually a term that was put on them after they had by the next ones down the line, yeah.
Oh,
And
not that one,
it's
anthropology.
Well, no, it was used by and continues to be used by indigenous people of Mesoamerica, referring to that particular culture and that civilization. But it's one of those words, sort of like Anasazi, which is a word for somebody who came later, who said about the ones before them, and it means craftsmen, craftspeople, artisans.
So from the Mesoamerican concept of time, what would this time be now, or the 2001, or?
I've been studying the calendar, and I wish that there was a couple of people I could think of who'd be excellent guests to really talk about the calendar in detail.
Because it's based on 20, isn't it?
Well, 20 and 13, and what's the 52-year period is referred to as the Mesoamerican century. So the term, the period of time that had the same sort of role in the popular consciousness that a century does now during this common era, as I prefer calling it, was that 52-year period. And in fact, that's something I was curious that nobody brought up. What is this BC and BCE stuff, or CE and BCE stuff that I said?
Common era before common era.
There you go.
That's the non-Christian politically correct terminology.
Well, I got it
Before
from
Caucasian era.
I got it from actually reading Jewish material. That's where I believe it came from. The
exactly.
Jews have been using it for a long time.
That's because
Jewish
they're
American
non-Christians.
And I liked it because then I didn't have to cop to something. No, this is not the year of my Lord. It might be the year of somebody else's Lord, but then why do they get the right to lord it over me?
Right. The year of the landlord.
So I go for the CE and BCE
I
myself.
dig it too.
Well, so what do you think?
I think it's scary, but I think it's interesting that you would bring this issue up.
Yes.
Yes, because you're the one who's apt to identify with cultural notions of what people should do and how they should live, and of poetic solutions, and you're the touchy-feely one.
Yeah.
And it's the millennia thing strikes me as being in the same vein. And there's something very millennial about the way the Aztec, for example, dealt with the calendar when it rolled around to being their time to have an empire. The Aztec...
Yeah, imperialism is
Aztec,
nasty stuff.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm referring to is the Aztec belief that the sun would not maintain its course in the sky without blood sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that those sacrifices were required in particular at the end of the what we're calling this Maya century, every 52 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mesoamerican century, yeah.
Yeah, and that Aztec sense of it was shares a lot with millennial notions that come out of the mystical traditions in Judaism and Christianity, that there is some sort of end, although they were taking very concrete action to keep the end from happening, but they were staring the end in the face.
Mm-hmm. Well, something that's fascinating about that business of this blood sacrifice, if we go back a little further, if we go back to the time of the Toltecas and the ancient stories, they say that Quetzalcoatl was opposed to human sacrifice, saying that it was an exaggeration. We see this frequently, for example, when people burn sage. It's funny that around people who just deal with sage and copal and sweetgrass and cedar and those things as a part of their everyday life, the idea is just to get it on you, just to wash off in it, we'll say. And then people who have sort of come to this late, coming out of what I'll call the New Age scene, sort of go into this whole like interpretive dance Martha Graham thing, with all of this sort of graceful fanning. I wish this was television so you can see these gestures I'm making, like kind of.
He's making very graceful fanning gestures.
Kind of like
with the arms.
like a front lawn whirlygig kind of thing.
In a rotary.
And it's like it's a ridiculous exaggeration. So the point is that Quetzalcoatl said that this was wrong, that his sacrifices were to be made, that flowers, butterflies, things like that were enough of the life force that would deal with everything. But then that priests who were in opposition to him, ultimately in political opposition to him because they wanted power, came to him and said, no, that it should be human sacrifice. He said, no. So they brought him alcohol and got him drunk. He'd never had it. And they fermented maguey sap and octli. It's called in Nahuatl, known as pulque, mostly now. And they brought this to him, and he'd never had alcohol before he got drunk. And then they say in these ancient stories that he then behaved in a particularly reprehensibly shameful manner and realized that he then had to be banned. I won't get into the details.
Sounds like Dionysian rites, too, ancient Dionysian rites.
It involved the kinds of stuff that, I won't get into it. Anyhow, he then had to leave because he had so shamed himself that he no longer was worthy of people's respect. So he then left, and it is in this time then that the Maya people then developed Kukulkan, which in a Mayan language also means feathered serpent. But he left, and Kukulkan in the Mayan language means what Quetzalcoatl means in Nahuatl. So the point here is that then these priests who believed in human sacrifice then took over, and at this time human sacrifice began. And that this was a part of the inheritance then of the Mexica Chichimeca, who came to be known as the Aztecs, and that when Moctezuma saw Cortés and those people, and they say that they thought he was Quetzalcoatl. There's something much deeper. They thought that this was going to be the retribution of Quetzalcoatl. Because using killing of human beings, killing a person is a profoundly powerful way of bonding, not just small groups, but large groups. And it's been used in places like Guatemala, for example, when the army, there's many stories of, in these last 15 years or so, of the army going into a community and separating the women and the children, putting them typically in the church, in the village church, rounding up all the men and telling them, now, you will kill one of your own or we will torch the church. And frequently one of the elders of the community has said, I've lived my life, you can kill me. And it's happened dozens of times where people then have been told to do it any way you want to, or to do it with machetes, or to do it with sticks, or in some way. And this creates a perverse, strange kind of bond. You can imagine, I don't know if you can imagine, the combination of guilt, of all of the feelings, because it perhaps an individual would be involved in killing somebody who had land that individual wanted to get to, or somebody they were jealous with, or somebody that they loved, or all of the above. Their mother's uncle, their own uncle, their aunt, or not aunt, but uncle, grandfather, whatever, and there's a profound bonding. It's used in combat. Violence is used also to bond elite groups. Like with the recent case of the Marines finally getting busted, it got known publicly that they were pinning people's insignia on their chest, and they've been doing that for a long time, So it's a very powerful bond, and far be it from me to ever justify imperialism in any form, including indigenous forms of imperialism. And obviously, the Aztec Empire was on the verge of of collapse, or Cortés would not have found the allies to fight against the Aztecs. So I'm not going to defend that.
There were some of the quote enemy.
Might break in just a moment to remind people that they're listening to Antithesis, a regular feature here on KGNU on Sundays.
And we have a new feature.
A new feature.
Email.
Yeah, the email feature.
email feature. You can communicate with Antithesis by getting out your computer and using it for something besides a toy. You can use it as an actual nerve ending in this nervous
Very good,
system,
very
electronic
good.
nervous system that we are supposed to be creating, which precious few people involve themselves in, by tapping in OCOTL, OCOTL, at AOL.com. And of course, you can call the KGNU comment line
499 7711.
That's it, 499
We do appreciate
7711.
we do appreciate your comments. We have a guest with us this week.
Yes, we do.
Eulalia Theodore.
Hi.
Hi. Who's a school teacher from Denver, keeping us in touch
The old school teacher.
with
And-
the youth in Denver.
And you identify very much with the fact that you are Greek.
Yes.
And the Greeks have their own calendar.
Yeah, I think they used a little bit of it starts with a J.
With a
Not
J.
Justinian.
Julian,
calendar.
which was before the Gregorian calendar.
Right. But I still think there is human sacrifice. It's just not called that today.
Well, everybody who dies as a result of unsafe cars, anybody who
Well,
dies as a
and-
result of unsafe food.
As a
Any-
result of purposeful CEO corporate
Yeah.
maquiladoras
Okay, victims of premeditated random murder perpetrated by the
in factories throughout the world.
are victims to what god?
The god of the dollar.
It's a very powerful god. You don't want that one pissed off at you.
I piss them off all the time. I go out of my way
It's bad
to
enough.
anger and annoy that
Anger
particular
sun
deity.
gods, but woo, boy, the dollar god.
Oh no, the dollar
Oh,
god.
my.
The dollar god's just a flash in the pan.
Well, aren't they all?
Perhaps.
So,
How's that for sidestepping?
Did you like that?
let's come back to millennial thinking.
Okay.
Because
Right.
I'm intrigued here now that we've established that there's this connection between Maya millennial thinking and Christian millennial thinking.
Well, I think
At least in the sense that it's millennial.
It would be good, I think, to look at it in terms. Let's use the term Mesoamerican. Let's use an appropriate
Mesoamerican,
Yeah, an appropriate
larger
generic term
sense.
because there's a calendar in use among the Maya, calendar in use among many people who were distinct from each other, and I think that one of the main differences that I can see in terms of this attitude, because it makes sense that you have a beginning of something and an end of something and a beginning of something else, is that the Mayan idea of zero, this numerical concept which then spread around Mesoamerica, is something that was not merely empty, it also implied in itself fullness. And I think that one of the things that one of the big differences is that instead of having some sort of strange, I don't know what this new century thing is. To me, it just looks like an excuse to party. Instead of that, there was the view, we could call it a tantric view, that with the end, that integral to the end of something is the beginning. And a cyclical sense of what time is about, that time goes round and round and round rather than time being a straight line.
Which is the Jewish sense of time.
I don't know because I'm not a
Because it
Jew.
is
I
a
don't know.
different year on the Judaic calendar
Well, just
as well.
that sense.
I mean,
'Cause the whole concept of Messiah in our culture comes out of the Jewish tradition.
see,
and so
that's-
that it's a
that's
very
not-
linear kind of thing, although it moves in cycles. Whereas the Mesoamerican sense of time is very definitely a
Absolutely,
circle.
yeah, absolutely cyclical. I think that I see a very different, that leading to a different ego structure. And I don't know whether if it leads from or if it leads to a different kind of ego structure, which is something that Richard and I have discussed in the past. I say that I know that my ego structure goes back. I use a vertical model, linear vertical model, to explain a certain relationship with time, that my ego actually extends to the time of my people's creation. And extends, we could say, forward through time to the time of the next creation, to the time of the creation of people from from white and yellow corn. And it's a whole other kind of identity where this as well as actually my ego structure, and I would speak for a lot of other people also, using a horizontal linear model here, extends through all of my people. You know, we have this concept of carnalismo, which we have spoken of in the past, saying that we are of the same flesh. And you know, it's just something that's different, and I think that a lot of that has to do with our view toward time, that every this is funny, people always say, what is the answer to the problem, whatever the social issue is? And there is no, I take the view, there is no the answer to the problem, there is only process. There's only a moving toward, because my elders have taught me that every generation will have the opportunity to live out that first adventure of the earliest brothers, in some cases, well, siblings, some cases it's female and male, some cases all male, some cases all female, who are the ones who have to prove themselves worthy of the instruments, of tools and weapons with which they will defend and provide for the mother and the future generations.
Well, just that coming of age, becoming an adult.
Well, it's
every culture has that.
Again, I don't know the extent to which.
Although with ours, it's kind of shallow because you just get to vote and drink beer.
Yeah, and
drive.
And with ours, we get to confront genocide.
Well, if you're paying attention, anyway.
Yeah, and yeah, of course.
People pay attention.
Yeah, and that's of course one of the big problems. But this cyclical sense of time endows each of us who live within it, you know, the ability to be a warrior.
It occurs to me when you're making this point about cyclical into the whole warrior thing. It reminds me of the end of the Cold War, because we were all told at the end of the Cold War that was the end of history.
Well, I tell you what,
sort of in the end time, the golden time.
Well,
of
I tell
capitalism.
You, some people may think this is the golden time of radio, because they might think that this is the golden time of radio because this is the end of the show.
Well, it is kind of the end of the show, isn't it?
Yep,
That music
sure
thing has started again.
Yep. So, folks, if you want to make any comments, I don't know, maybe you're cyclical of us being here on the radio, whatever it is that you want to say to us, please email us at ocotl, that's OCOTL, at AOL.com, or give us a call at the KGNU comment line.
449-7711.
What is that? Isn't it
I have the hardest time with that number.
499. No, it's
499.
499-7711. We want to thank Eulalia.
Thank you for inviting me.
Our
to
favorite
this.
school teacher from Denver. Thanks
That's
for coming
right.
up.
Eulalia Theodore
For the day.
was in here, and so, folks, we'll catch you later. Turn up the music.
Antithesis. 5:30 to 6 every Sunday here on KGNU.
I like music loud. That's something else we
88.5
don't agree
FM.
about. Richard always wants to play the music real soft and stuff. Come on, crank it up, man.
Blast it, please.
Pump it.